Welcome back to Breaking Points. Krystal and I are so excited to be joined right now by my Counterpoints co-host, Ryan Grimm, who happens to be the author of a brand new book. It's out on December 5th. You can start getting it in bookstores the Monday after Thanksgiving. It's called The Squad, AOC and the Hope of a Political Revolution. It's fantastic. There's so many nuggets in it, Ryan.
You're enjoying it?
Yes,
Excellent.
yes. Thanks for joining us here, Ryan.
Well, thanks for having me on here.
Congrats.
Love to talk about the book.
Yeah. Well, it ended up being extra timely because obviously the arc of The Squad is just important in American politics and for, people left of center in general. But there's also a lot in the book about the way that that AIPAC and their spinoff, the Democratic Majority for Israel, has aggressively tried to shape the Democratic caucus, who gets in, who gets out, what their views are. So it ends up being extra timely because of that piece.
Yeah, I have a line in there that finishes the first chapter that kind of introduces AOC, where that arc ends, if you remember, a couple weeks after she wins her primary. She's soaring, her star is rising, she's crushing every interview, she's becoming a global celebrity, and then she does an interview where she gets asked about Israel-Palestine. And it's just like,
it's just clear she doesn't really, she knows it's a tough topic. She knows she doesn't know enough about the topic, and the inexperience is very clear in that moment.
And her instincts are that she supports Palestinian rights and Palestinian dignity, and she says the word Palestine in the interview. And
an occupation, right?
And I think occupation, yeah. In the interview, which is somebody who is more schooled in the subject will be like, yeah, that's what I call the region, and there is an occupation, like that's what's happening. But the interviewer is like, did you say Palestine?
Margaret Hoover, right?
Yeah, and you can see AOC's face be like, oh God, did I hit a third rail? I'm not, it's a feeling where, because there are third rails, there are landmines everywhere.
Right.
And you put your foot down and you heard a click and you're like, is that about to blow up or not? Because I don't know. And she finishes by saying, look, I'm not an expert on geopolitics. This isn't something that we talked about a lot at my Bronx dinner table growing up. And it's very unusual for somebody to admit on TV that you don't know much about something like that. It's very rare. And then she, as I report in the book, they pull her off interviews for a while. Like, okay, let's relax for a little bit. And then the line that finishes that chapter says she knew it was going to be a big issue, but she never could have guessed how much she underestimated it. It became, and nobody could have seen, I don't think, it coming, how a movement that was built around Medicare for all, higher minimum wage, basically economic populism and a Green New Deal would end up being just consumed by this question of Israel-Palestine. And that's because the fight was kind of brought to them. Immediately after they got to Congress, the pro-Israel groups just stand up, these super PACs that start spending millions of dollars against them. Like alphabet.
And the cool thing about the book is that you go behind the scenes of some of these huge moments. Like, for example, the Margaret Hoover interview, you're right there with AOC talking about how her team is handling it. You have information from behind the scenes that makes all of this really fascinating. I wanted to ask how the Squad sees itself now in 2023. First of all, how do they kind of define themselves? You have Justice Democrats, then you have people that are sort of broadly recognized as members of the Squad. How self-aware are they in Congress as they're working together or not working together? It's heavily female. Obviously, you have Jamal Bowman on the book cover, but it does seem almost like a sisterhood.
Yeah, and I think, as the book shows, they sort of struggled with that question of what is the Squad, or kind of is the Squad. Several of them at different points would say there is no such thing as the Squad.
It's the first rule of the Squad.
You can't,
Squad doesn't
you can't
exist.
acknowledge that there is a Squad, and in many ways they were right. It was a media creation built on but they played along with it. It came from an Instagram kind of post that AOC put up. It was just a picture of the four of them, and she just wrote Squad. And that was during the kind of rise of the kind of femboss, feminism, girl power. They did there was a cover with them and Nancy Pelosi, which obviously they were not a Squad at all. And she's like,
we should get that framed for the studio.
That's a great idea.
Iconic.
That was a media effort to kind of strip ideology away from what was fundamentally an ideological movement. Omar says at one point, there is no Squad. There's no such thing. But of course, there also is a thing, because if you are getting attacked as a group, it kind of forms you into a group. And so you're kind of forged by fire in that sense. And when whether it's Pelosi in 2019, Donald Trump in 2019 saying send them back. One kind of funny little detail I realized when going back through the history was when at Netroots Nation, which is the liberal blogosphere kind of conference.
Oh, I've been.
Yeah, there you go. That's where Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar said some things that got Trump mad and got him to start saying send them back. Pelosi would love to buy them tickets to send them back. Deb Haaland was on stage with them. It wasn't the squad. It was those 3+ Deb Haaland, literally Native American. Like the last, forget the fact that the rest are American citizens and you're not sending them anywhere. Literally a Native American saying send her back. But I don't think Trump cared about that. But so I think that effort to kind of attack them, kind of push them into being a group. But at the same time, as Ayanna Pressley told the squad, you vote alone. And so you vote alone and you vote for your district. And they would often talk about how they were voting for their district. And in some ways, I think they resented this insistence that they were supposed to lead a vanguard of the left. And there was a marriage of convenience in some ways between Justice Democrats and the squad members. The Justice Democrats was useful to some of these squad members to separate themselves, particularly in Ayanna Pressley's case, from why do you need to throw out Michael Capuano? And then, well, I'm a Justice Democrat. I'm like AOC. So that's that becomes the rationale for it. But then you're like, they didn't really have the sense of well, I'm gonna lead a movement here.
Yeah.
And they never teamed up with Bernie in a way that became kind of mechanical.
Well, it's interesting because right now in this present moment with Israel's war in Gaza, they have actually acted more like a squad. They've been some of the most outspoken critics of the Biden approach, of the indiscriminate bombing in Gaza, calling for a ceasefire, leading these letters. And so talk a little bit about how actually the amount of money and the amount of attacks that they received in their primaries and as being members of Congress coming from the pro-Israel lobby actually kind of hardened them into these positions and unintentionally made them leaders on it.
It could be because if AOC never gets, let's say AOC never gets pressed further on the question of Israel, Palestine, Gaza, her focus is going to continue to be climate change, raising the minimum wage, and broadly trying to pull the Democratic Party to the left and kind of advance the agenda that Bernie Sanders ran on first time in 2015, 2016. But if you force the question, in a similar way to the way that Karl Rove did in 2004, by putting marriage equality on the ballot on all of these states around the country, that forced Democrats to pick a side. Because they would have been happy to just say, civil union, marriage between a man and a woman, leave me alone. I don't want to, this is icky, I don't want to think about this. But when you force the Democratic Party to take a stance on a fundamentally civil rights issue, eventually they're going to be forced by their base to get on the right side of it. And I think particularly with Israel-Palestine, the more people, as you study the history, as you study what's going on, as you visit the area, Jamal Bowman went with J Street to see it. And he was bizarrely protested by, some people associated with DSA. How dare you go with J Street to Israel? But seeing it firsthand, seeing the occupation up close, you come back changed. You can, once you move past the propaganda around it and you see it firsthand and you really understand what's going on, you can only wind up on one side if you're a progressive Democrat. And so I think that that is what has effectively happened. Also, as Summer Lee told me, I was like, did you consider moderating your views on this the way that a lot of other candidates did? And she was like, well, no, but only because that wouldn't have worked.
Right.
They were coming for me either way. She did say that it's in her head. She admitted that the millions of dollars that was spent, it does get in your head, and you think 2 or 3 times before you say something. But she's like, in the end, it doesn't matter because they're coming for me, and not just because of 2 tweets I had about Gaza in 2021. It's because of my broader kind of left-wing, multiracial working class agenda that is in opposition to the donors to AIPAC and to DMFI. Like they have other interests as well besides just Israel-Palestine.
Yeah.
They want to keep their tax loopholes and
Of course.
keep their taxes low and all that's fight back against unions and that sort of stuff.
Yes, of course.
So my last question is something you get towards in the end of the book about the kind of attempt to make an apples to apples between the Squad and the Freedom Caucus, which isn't, you know, a dumb comparison. There's some interesting points of comparison there. And something I thought that was interesting in your reporting was that there is some awareness, actually, of how the Freedom Caucus has flexed their muscles over the last 10 years among members of the Squad. There's a hilarious conversation about Lauren Boebert with AOC. She has some really funny thoughts on Lauren Boebert. And that's an interesting, who among us? But that is an interesting sort of question for the Squad, is how do they force the vote? Do they, I mean, how has their thinking evolved on using their numbers to force some of these conversations?
I think they have definitely heard the criticism, and it's something I think that they're sorting through. I think when it comes to some issues, like I go through force the vote a little bit in there, and there's a page.
No, guys. I would love to talk about forcing the vote.
Please don't.
What are you guys' thoughts on this?
We're just going to do force the vote every day for the entire show for the rest of our lives. On that, they're like, no, that wasn't it. But they do get the idea. Like they are into the idea that they want to build their leverage. And toward the end of it, AOC is saying, now that we're approaching 10 to 12, like that's a place where there's power that can be leveraged and in a way that won't be annihilated. And there was a sense of weakness that I think that contributed to some, as well as like a sense of being new and not really having a sense of how this is all going to end. At the same time, though, will there still be 10 or 12 at the end of this next election cycle, or will there be 2?
Right.
Like, it is quite possible that a lot of them could get wiped out by AIPAC and DMFI money before.
Which just announced they're going to spend $100 million against them.
Sort of. The sourcing on that was a little dicey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, I think it was sourced to people who are watching or something. However,
there's a threat.
Yeah, the $100 million is plausible, because if they're spending $5 million in 20 races, that gets you there right away. And it's not implausible, but AIPAC hasn't quite come out and said they're going to do that. They haven't confirmed or denied that money. They're going to spend an enormous amount of money. That is
whether
that is clear.
100 mil is the number.
Like last time they spent like 40 collectively between the pro-Israel group. So it wouldn't be insane to see 100.
Gotcha. Well, the book is fantastic. I'm almost through it. I'm excited to do a talk with you at, where are we doing it?
Politics and
Prose.
Yes.
On November 26th. It's going to be great.
Oh, 27th, Monday. Go there on the 26th and buy the book.
I'm so excited that I don't know the name of where we're doing it or the date we're doing it.
Doesn't matter.
It's fine.
It shows up in your calendar.
I will be there.
And then you go. That's all there is.
I'll be there. I'll be ready to rock. The book is fantastic. Congratulations on it, Ryan. It's always great to see you. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.